Welcome to the Explainer. All right, let's jump right in. Just when it looked like a major conflict in the Middle East was about to boil over, well, everything changed. We're going to break down this absolutely stunning last-minute development that slammed the brakes on what seemed like a guaranteed war between the US and Iran.
And believe it or not, it all kicked off with this one post. I mean, this thing dropped and it was so out of the blue, it caught everyone, even the most seasoned reporters, completely off guard. So let's take a look at what it actually says.
And yeah, just like that, the entire situation did a complete 180. I mean, we've had weeks of escalating attacks, everything pointing towards a huge military clash, and then suddenly the conversation shifts from all-out destruction to, well, dialogue.
Okay, so what were the specifics here? Let's dig into how we went from what looked like a final, non-negotiable ultimatum to, well, to the negotiating table.
Right, so at the heart of all this is one key word: de-escalation. And it's exactly what it sounds like, right? It's the act of trying to dial back the intensity, to step back from the edge of a really dangerous situation, especially after all that pressure we've seen building up.
So the post itself actually lays out a few key points. And what's wild is how positive the tone is. You see words like productive in there. But, and this is a big but, it's also super clear that this whole pause is conditional. Take a look at that last point. This entire de-escalation lives or dies based on the success of the ongoing discussions. No pressure, right?
And here's the real kicker, the timeline. This is not some open-ended ceasefire. Nope, we're talking about a very tight 5-day window. That's it, 5 days for these talks to actually get somewhere before that threat of military strikes is right back on the table.
So to really get why this pause is such a huge deal, you gotta look at what was happening right before it. Because, let me tell you, the last few weeks have been the exact opposite of quiet. It's been one intense escalation after another, leading us right up to this moment. In this timeline, wow, it just lays out how fast everything was moving. The source material describes some really intense military action. We're talking thousands of US airstrikes, then a direct 48-hour ultimatum. And what happens next? Iran fires dozens of ballistic missiles at Israel in response. So you see this pattern, right? Attack, counterattack, attack, counterattack. And that's exactly why today's announcement felt like it came from another planet, just completely out of nowhere. Okay, so this talk of productive conversations, it immediately brings up a huge question. It's actually the same one the reporters were wrestling with in the source material. If we're talking, who are we actually talking to? And according to the analysis we're drawing from, this right here is the biggest black box in the whole situation. It is the key question. Because look, it's one thing to be having a conversation. It's a completely different thing to be talking to the person who can actually make a decision and stick to it.
And that's the bottom line. We just don't know who's really calling the shots on the Iranian side at this moment. You've got reports that a lot of the hardliners have been eliminated in the recent strikes, and the supreme leader himself is thought to be seriously injured. So who's on the other end of the phone? It's a complete mystery.
All right, so setting aside the immediate crisis for a second, the source material also dives into the much bigger picture, the fundamental issues that have been fueling this conflict for years. And any real long-term deal is going to have to tackle these core problems head-on.
And this really breaks it down into three huge, high-stakes problems. First, you've got the Strait of Hormuz, a vital shipping lane for the whole world. Then, there's Iran's ballistic missile program, and of course, the big one, its nuclear program. These aren't small issues. These are the massive, massive hurdles that any real agreement would have to clear.
So where do we go from here? I think the key thing to take away from the source is this. While the announcement is a huge development, it's just a pause. It's not the end of the story. The situation is still incredibly fluid, and there are so many critical questions still hanging in the air.
And this is a really important distinction that was made in the original reporting. The halt in military action is very specific. It's about strikes against power plants and energy infrastructure. But as one analyst pointed out, the announcement doesn't say an end to the military operation as a whole. And what could that mean? Well, it could mean that operations against other targets, say terrorist groups or Iranian proxies in the region, might just keep on going. And that really leaves us with the billion-dollar question, doesn't it? Is this 5-day pause the start of a real path to peace? Or is it just hitting the snooze button on a conflict that's bound to erupt anyway? The next 5 days are going to be absolutely critical, and you can be sure the entire world will be watching to see which way this goes.